Steve Farwick was just saying, you know, this is in essence a kind of brief review and future programme discussion. I hope that everybody has got a copy of the draft future programme that they can see. If not, I'll briefly run through it. Has everybody got a copy of the draft future programme? Yeah, people are nodding.
It was sent out, yeah, everybody should have it.
Apologies, Alison, I've not been sent it because I'm sort of stepping in for Gaynor Kenyon from United
Okay,
Utility.
not to worry.
Yeah.
Lord Heseltine, you're muted if you wanted to say something.
I'm unmuted now.
Excellent, thank you, my lord.
I have seen the document.
Okay, great. Well, why don't we just turn to that then? Because ideally, you know, really what we need to do is just agree next year's meetings, and people will have seen that the first proposal for January is about green recovery, and that is obviously something that's very important to us in terms of investment in the city region, and obviously for the broader world and in the country in terms of COP26 and the priorities at the current moment. And then moving on to kind of good jobs and the local economy, which is again something that has been a priority of the group. So if people would indicate if they'd just like to say anything about the future programme as drafted, that would be great. There's obviously stuff that we will want to add in, which is fine, or move up the list, which is great. But if I've got Kim so far, if people just want to indicate if there's anything they want to say, and then we can just take a decision about how to go forward over the next months, that would be great. Kim.
Thanks, Al. I think the future plan was a good starting point. It has all the things that I'd like to see in it, but I'd also like to say something about race and equality in it, given that we had a session this year. LCR are doing something about improving the situation across the region, so to have a review session would be really helpful. Thanks, Al.
That sounds good to me. Anybody else at this point want to come in?
Could you outline briefly what's in the programme?
Sorry, Lord Heseltine, could you say that again? I missed that, sorry.
Outline briefly what's in the programme.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll do that. So the proposed programme for next year is a first meeting in January on challenges and opportunity for a green recovery. And obviously people will understand in terms of the proposals for investment around energy in the city region. We'll cover that and where the opportunities are in terms of the potential jobs that might come out of green recovery. Next session on creating good jobs and getting a skilled labour force in Merseyside. The next session that's suggested is on green travel and the increased use of low carbon vehicles, and potentially, you know, how we might encourage walking and cycling. And then we've got a further one which actually builds on the kind of green theme on net zero infrastructure. There's other suggestions that we'll fit in the rest of the year, health and well-being in Liverpool City region. The devolution white paper seems to be being put back by government, so that's something we might want to touch on. Digital issues, which have been very important to us in the city region, and also on food poverty, which is a major point of campaigning and challenge in terms of poverty. So those are the suggestions. Kim's just added in a review session on race and diversity, which I think is very important. Aileen, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest we're expecting a refreshed national industrial strategy. Probably around, well, it's been delayed. We were expecting it at the end of this year, but I think it'll be sometime early next year, and I thought it would be helpful to incorporate that into our thinking.
That's really great. Alan Southern is saying into the chat, digital, should we be thinking more broadly about the fourth industrial revolution, AI and its impact? I think that's a really good point. Unlike the kind of green energy stuff, I don't think there's a really well thought through idea of what we'd want to talk about in terms of digital innovation, although it is very important to the city region. So perhaps Alan, you and others might email through suggestions, because we've got plenty of time to think about it. Anybody else want to come in at this point?
Can I come back?
Please, Steve.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Lord Hasseltine, go for it.
Well, the first thing that I would say is that you ought to be making a fuss about the fact that the devolution white paper has disappeared, frankly. No one in Whitehall is taking it seriously, and the whole agenda has slipped. And I think that you should put that at the top of your list, and it should be in concert with the other mayoral authorities. My second point is, I think that, forgive me, but this is a forum in which we can talk frankly. There's an element of fashion about what you're talking about. I heard a lot about green jobs. Well, I'm very keen on green jobs, but I'm much keener on jobs. And so the first thing I think you should be doing is a SWOT analysis of the greater economy of Liverpool. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And you should have a critical eye as to your strengths and equally your weaknesses. And so you should have a view about where the best ways forward are, including eliminating the weak areas of your area. And if you look at that, it comes to my first and overarching priority, education and skills. Whatever you're going to do in the future, and no one is keener than I am on you being successful, you depend on the skill and education and training of your workforce. And it's not good enough. So I think the top of your priority internally should be failing schools. And you've got too many. And you have to make up your minds what you're going to do about it. And frankly, it's not comfortable, it's not easy, and it is not about somebody else. It is about looking school by school, about the people running it, about the governors, about the head teachers, and coming up with a survival strategy that takes you from, in some cases, some of your schools to low and unattaining levels to high levels. So that's my opening comment on what you've said, but I'm delighted Steve, who's actually the boss man in all this, has now joined us.
Thank you. I'll just say on the SWOT analysis, Aileen Jones, who is our chief economist, has much of that, and that's definitely something that we will pick up and go over when we're talking about the economic future issues in January. So thank you, that's really helpful. On the devolution white paper and it being kicked into the long grass, that is definitely an issue that we need to think about and how to pick that up. Perhaps we might be better with some one-to-one conversations, and Steve, you might want to comment on that. Steve Rotherham, there's a number of Steves on the call. One Steve good, more Steves better. So Steve, you might just want to say if the mayors have got a view about how we should handle, the fact that, as Lord Hasseltine just mentioned, the devolution white paper has gone missing. Just before Mayor Steve Rotherham, I'll bring you in after we've had this discussion, if that's all right. We're just agreeing the future programme. If you then want to kind of present in terms of the lessons from the spending review and anything else you want to say to us. But before that, Kim, can I just bring you back in?
I'll just put that comment in the chat box about we need to be thinking about housing going to be a big issue. It is a big issue at the moment in terms of high quality housing for our constituents. So I think house building is something that needs to be considered. Housing and along with homelessness, because I would imagine as the year progresses, things will worsen for a lot of people in that area. Thanks.
Thanks, and that slots right into exactly as we've been talking about in terms of development and one of the proposals that the city region has made on housing and making it green and energy efficient. Okay, and thanks Sue Jarvis for saying the Hasseltine Institute is keen to support discussions. Thanks, we'll make use of that offer offline if that's okay. Steve Rotherham, go for it.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, apologies for being slightly late, but I'm certain that some of the reasons behind that may become more evidence as the day progresses. In regard to what Lord Heseltine was talking about with the devolution white paper, I only caught the end of it, but I think he's absolutely right, the bit that I heard, and that the government at this moment in time appear to have gone a bit lukewarm, shall I say, on devolution, and that can be speculated on for a whole host of different reasons. Maybe they don't like the fact that if you give somebody some power and the government aren't doing their side of the bargain and you call them out, then they don't normally like being criticised when they're seen to be the ones who gave you the power in the first place. So it could be something to do with that, but who knows? We'll have to see. We've put an M9, that's the Metro Mayors group, so it's a cross-party group of Metro Mayors. We've put our requests into government and our comments, and it has to be, say, some criticisms of what the devolution white paper should look like. And one of the things that it should have is a single pot of funding. If we're going to be serious about devolution, it can't be about decentralisation, and it certainly can't be about delegated authority to do something that the government would do anyway, because that's not devolution. So you need to be trusted with a pot of money. When devolution was set up, one of the things that we had to do is to agree a whole host of processes and constitutional issues, which included an assurance framework. And that assurance framework guarantees the government that if they give devolved areas monies, then it will only be used for those things that are agreed with central government. So in other words, it can't be used for potholes, it can't be used for adult health services, it can't be used for other non-combined authority priorities. So it's all, working in partnership. It has to go both ways, doesn't it? Just moving on, Chair, if we could, to the statement. And again, I know this is a cross-party group, but for me, it was a bit of a damp squib, in all honesty. It sort of came and went, and then you thought, well, what was that all about? Because there was a missed opportunity in it, and that was a missed opportunity to actually provide that economic support that can help areas to build back better, but also to bounce back faster. We need to do stuff that's going to happen in the immediacy, and not what the Chancellor seemed to be saying is that sometime in the future we're going to give some monies away, which, if you have some schemes, we'll start to talk about those at a later date. And so, for instance, the Levelling Up Fund, it was a bit of a joke. It's repurposed money anyway, which should have been coming to areas like ours, and it's now a beauty contest. And I genuinely feel that it's been sort of missold. I think the more parliamentary buy-in that we can get for anything, the better it is. The more that MPs can be involved in decision making, the better it is. But when you say there's a pot of money and you can come to us as an MP and then we might be able to help you out, that smacks, it just, there's something a bit dirty in regard to that approach. And I think what the underlying message is to those sort of dissident Tory MPs, if you behave yourself, there might be a pot of money that we can help your area with, especially you who happen to be in the red wall constituencies. That's not good for democracy, I'm afraid. So I really think we need to be challenging and pushing back against that. In our area, we put, as we all know, a £1.4 billion recovery package to government. And we had a presentation on it a few weeks ago. And within that, there are some unbelievably ambitious schemes. And I don't mean ambitious as an overly ambitious that we can never reach them. Ambitious for the city region, but ambitious for UK PLC. And they're all over the city region. They are, in Port Sunlight, but in every other area in the country, in the combined authority. The one in Port Sunlight is so important to the country that it's about developing alternatives to plastics. So it's the Packaging Innovation Centre. It could be great for the whole globe, and why that wasn't chosen, I can't understand it when it's in an oven-ready, a spade-ready project, as the Prime Minister has asked us to do. So there are a whole host of things that I think they could help us with, but it's just this Whitehall knows best approach, and I'm afraid it can't continue, and that's what devolution is supposed to be about. Just very quickly then, Chair, on the spending review, the potential increases that we're passing on, or that the government are making council pass on, so 4.5% in council spending, for instance, in core spending power, but they're going to have to put tax bills up by 5%, which is an added burden on households when everyone's struggling through this period anyway. So it's a bit smoke and mirrors. It's, you know, councils having to bear the brunt again of the increases when they're least able to afford to pass those on, plus the fact that they have huge black holes in their budgets because they did what the government said they should do. And Mrs. Sunak said, whatever it takes. And our councils took that at face value, went out and did whatever it took, but then we're told it's whatever we're prepared to give to you. And they've left them again floundering in many instances with huge funding gaps in their budgets. And they have a legal duty, of course, to balance their budgets next year. So that's going to be really difficult for them. But we've got to try and push, haven't we? We've got to try and cajole the government into doing the right thing. And then just on the last one, you know, it was the ordinary people, wasn't it, that got us through the dark months. It was the police officers, the firefighters and the teachers, but it was also loads of those key workers who aren't really recognised. But that was the workforce in the public sector that kept this country going. And then to say that there's going to be a freeze on public sector pay next year, I think was an absolute travesty of an opportunity missed. And it's all well and good clapping people, it's all well and good giving badges out, but actually for those people who are really struggling and who've done some fantastic work for us all, sometimes you need to reward that. And I think the government's had the chance to say thank you very much. Nobody would have balked at a pay award for them because of what they've done, but instead they've been promised jam tomorrow again, and it's not good enough. So I'll leave that there, Chair.
Thanks, Steve. I haven't got anybody indicating that they've got any comments or questions or queries at this point. I think pretty much everyone would agree with what you said, unless anybody wants to wildly dissent, in which case indicate now and I will enable you to dissent wildly on this call. But I think it's hard to see the spending review as anything other than Steve just explained it as a bit of a council bit.
I think that's a legitimate party view. I'm afraid that the economic situation is so dire that maybe the body politic doesn't have the capacity to take the decisions that are necessary. And the truth is we are borrowing money that another generation will have to repay. And we have got to cut the costs. And that's going to be very unpleasant for the left of politics, who will concentrate on wage levels, and on the right of politics, who won't want to see any tax increases. My own view is we need economy and tax increases, and we need them quickly. But I'm not sure that will ring bells in this particular forum, but it's important that it's seen as a genuine response to one of the worst crises this country has faced in peacetime in my lifetime.
But Lord Heseltine, wouldn't you accept that the way in which you can repay debt is either through that, where, you know, generations, that will be a legacy for people to do that, or you can try and grow the economy and recover as quickly as possible, so that some of those borrowings back. And in our city region, it's not party political to say that we put a £1.4 billion package, which would generate £8.8 billion in GVA for the whole of the country. Surely that is a better solution than putting people on the dole, writing off a generation, no jobs, and the doldrums that you walked into in the 80s, and to go back to that in areas like Liverpool, surely there's a better way of doing things. But I agree with the premise of what you're saying.
Well, I think that you and I actually are very close, Steve. I am absolutely in despair at the lack of the devolution agenda, and I'm completely committed to the single pot concept that you talked about quite rightly, and which we had with George Osborne. And it's now not there, and what is there is less money in terms of local devolution. But my whole emphasis, as it was in '81 in Liverpool, is to prove that we can make things work on the ground. And so I'm 100%, 110% with you in programs and ideas and plans. But it's about investment and not consumption. And that's where the pain is.
Okay, I normally chair this pretty rigidly, but I thought that was a really important political discussion to have. It's important that we have dissent and that we listen to each other. A couple of people in the chat that I just want to bring in briefly. Firstly, Damien on the Green Book, because that's an interesting question, and then Erica on the likelihood of a windfall tax. I don't know if Erica, if you just want to say a little bit about that. Damien, then Erica.
Thanks, Alison. Yeah, I just obviously we've been talking about the Green Book for many years, and the way it kind of was tilted away from investment in the north, and just interested in perhaps Steve's views, but also wider views on the changes that Chancellor announced in the statement last week.
Okay, Erica.
Yeah, it's just the point that some people have done very well through the pandemic. Debbie's added, I think the supermarkets have done very well, and so have quite a lot of others. The rich have got richer in many ways. Is there any likelihood or any consideration going on of a windfall tax for those people who have done so very well?
Okay, I don't know if we might have some parliamentary colleagues actually who might have views about that as well. But Aileen or Steve, do you want to come back on the Green Book point at all?
Yes, thanks, Chair. This was something that I think about 3 years ago, Lord Heseltine included in his report, which was about the inherent unfairness in the methodology within the Green Book, which it made it less likely, if you followed the formula, that we could compete with areas in the south, because some of it was based on land value uplift, for instance, and stuff like that, where of course you're going to get a higher percentage in the southern areas than northern areas. So it's something that I think we're all very supportive of, looking at Green Book and making certain that we can compete on a like-for-like basis. That is levelling up. However, as we all know, the devil's always in the detail. And until we put a project forward and it's evaluated on the new methodology, then we're never going to know whether our business case, and the fact that it's all predicated on a BCR, as we know, whether we can get those above 1 where previously we might not have. I think an easier way of doing it might have just to have put social deprivation as one of the determinants. And if you evaluate on that basis, then of course we would get areas that feel as if for a long time they've been disadvantaged. We would have got those and got those business cases through more easily than the current way we do things.
Thanks, Steve. Aileen, was there anything that you wanted to add? The only thing I think on the Green Book is that the problem is what Steve mentioned before, which is the Towns Fund, where it seems that decisions are more likely to be taken politically or pseudo-politically than they are on the basis of the sort of transparent principles that the Green Book is supposed to be about. But that's just my view. Aileen?
Yeah. As well, they made some comments like it's not just about BCO, that there needs to be clear alignment with government objectives, place-based impacts and deliverability, which I think are helpful. But as we said as well, there are a lot of, that's where we need further detail. They talked about new employment multipliers, new carbon values, but yeah, it would be really helpful to see the detail on what that looks like. There was some helpful revisions as well.
The Green Book is a lot of nonsense. I mean, let me just give you the simplest thought. If you, the Green Book argument is that where you get the best return, you put the most money. Now, that sounds interesting. So if you get more money investing in the green fields around London, you should put more money investing in green fields around London. And certainly much more money than actually removing the pollution and toxicity on the banks of the Mersey. So what's the logic of that? Well, the logic is that you move Liverpool to the suburbs of London, because you will always get a bigger return if you simply invest in the most easily attainable economic circumstances. And so, as Steve very generously said, in my report for the mayors a few years ago, I said this nonsense has to stop. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you say, oh, well, it doesn't matter, because of course it does matter to try and get the best return. And that throws the emphasis, as again Steve has said, on the local mayors to come up with the best economic solutions they can find. And that's what the whole strategy of partnership is about, and why the government is in such, in my view, open to such criticism for abandoning effectively the devolution agenda.
That about sums it up. I think, Alan has said the language used by government about the economy seems to be preparing the country for more austerity. Is this the only choice we have? Which is broadly the discussion that that we've just been having, really, about how to get the idea of investment further up as a priority. I think, colleagues, unless anybody else wants to come in at this point, we are probably updated on where we were arising from the spending review. So I think that's probably all we need to cover off at this meeting. As per the future programme, the next meeting that we organise in January will be starting to look at the green issues. Meanwhile, if there's anything that anybody wants to feed in terms of the future programme, please do just email me, and we can pick that up. I'm sure it would be helpful is if city region colleagues have updates on the devolution white paper and anything else as it crops up. Aileen, you were mentioning some more details we might get about the process in terms of investment in the future. If there's stuff like that that I can circulate to colleagues in the meanwhile, I think that's really helpful, because it feels a little bit like we've got more questions than answers at the moment, and that might be the case until we have got the other side of Christmas and know where we're going with free trade agreements and a range of other things. Is there any, Aileen, did you want to add to that?
No, not at all. We can keep you updated as we hear anything further, and I can send through briefings if that's helpful, Alison.
That's fantastic, thank you. Unless there's anything else anybody desperately wants to add in at this point, I think that we'll probably make this a short and punchy meeting. Steve, did you want to say something, Barwick?
Yes, thanks, Alison. Just to say that the points that people have made, obviously we can incorporate into the programme, including obviously the emphasis on education. We can bring that into the skills one. Housing, I think, was in the session suggested around infrastructure. So definitely those points will be, and obviously the points Kim made about a review of the meeting and update on race and equality, I think can be factored in. Just to say, the other point was working with the combined authority colleagues. The idea was that in a sense to put forward some kind of report or short report that would kind of highlight the key issues in terms of where the economy does need support, where it is weaker, obviously where it's stronger and got opportunities and things to offer. So that report, so that would be compiled based on those 4 sessions at the start of the year. And obviously that would then be subject to agreement with the officers of the group and come to this group for discussion.
Thanks, Steve. Also, Damien's put in a really helpful comment in the chat there, just about we'll know that changes have really happened when we see updates to departmental guidance, which is essentially what Aileen was saying there, and that's absolutely right, of course. Okay, colleagues, unless anybody wants to add anything as a final point, I think we've got our future programme agreed there. And if anybody has anything to add to it that you think of later, as I said, please just be in touch, because we will make the agendas as maximal as possible so that we can get all the issues in. Okay, and can I just add one final word of thanks from me? Thanks to all the team at Evo Connect and all the other organisations who've participated and been supportive this year. It's really appreciated. Thanks to all the colleagues from City Region and in Steve's office who've helped. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, MP colleagues, for being a part of it. I think we've had some really good discussions, and we've been able to kind of push forward on behalf of Merseyside this year, and hopefully we will do that effectively next year as well. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, then.
Have a fabulous Christmas and New Year, everybody. Take care.